20 shockingly illegal things from the 70s. Were you guilty? The 70s was a completely different time. We had fewer rules to follow, and that meant life was a bit more risky. Things that seemed completely normal back then have, over time, become outlawed. So put on your seatbelts, time travelers, and let's take a nostalgic trip down memory lane to look back at all the things we did in the 70s that are now illegal. And number 13 is going to leave you thinking, wow, what a bizarre memory. 20. Kids buying cigarettes for parents. Ah, the good old days when kids could be their parents' personal delivery service for cigarettes. No ID checks, no questions, just a kid, a handwritten note, and a handful of change. Hey Jimmy, grabbing the usual for your dad? Maybe you even pocketed some of the change for a candy bar. These days, a kid trying this would have CPS and a full SWAT team at their doorstep in record time. Remember buying cigarettes for your parents and keeping the change? Well, you won't believe what it did to some people that were smoking on an airplane back then. 19. Walking dogs with diapers. Yes, this was an actual thing. In some places, before the great pooper-scooper laws of the 80s, dogs were required to wear diapers while out on walks. Try explaining that to your pup while strapping on their tiny, humiliating pants. The looks of betrayal were legendary. Luckily, this bizarre law faded away, replaced by the more reasonable, but still unpleasant, job of carrying plastic bags. 18. Lawn darts, aka the backyard guillotine. Nothing screamed unsupervised 70s summer, like whipping metal-tipped projectiles into the air and hoping nobody lost an eye. Lawn darts were basically tiny spears marketed as wholesome family fun. The game? Throw them toward a plastic ring. The real game? Dodge for your life. After multiple injuries and a few tragedies. They were banned in 1988, replaced with dull plastic versions that just don't hit the same. 17. Roller skating in public restrooms. Back when roller discos were the hottest thing around, people wanted to skate everywhere, even into the bathroom, which is why some cities actually banned roller skates in public restrooms. The combo of slippery floors, spinning wheels, and, well, bathroom business made for some legendary wipeouts. You just know someone tried using a stall while still rolling. The 70s had no chill. 16. Clackers. The original finger smashers. Every 70s kid either owned clackers or knew someone who did. Two acrylic balls attached to a string that you'd whip up and down to make a click-clack noise. The problem? Those things could shatter into sharp plastic shrapnel at any moment. Schools eventually banned them, but that just made them even cooler. Kids smuggled them in like they were secret contraband, proudly risking bruised fingers and a trip to the nurse's office. 15. Bathtubs without legs? Illegal. Believe it or not, some places actually required bathtubs to have legs. Think classic clawfoot tubs. The logic? Elevating tubs made it easier to clean underneath, reducing moisture buildup and preventing who knows what from growing. If you were remodeling in certain cities, a flat-bottomed tub was straight up illegal. Now, clawfoot tubs are a vintage luxury, but back then, they were literally the law. 14. Lead-based paint. Vibrant lead-based paint covered our walls, furniture, and children's toys throughout the 70s. Nobody worried about toddlers chewing on lead-painted cribs or the dust created when repainting. It wasn't until understanding the neurological damage it caused that it was banned in 1978. Remember those thick, glossy paint jobs that lasted forever? Probably lead paint. Many older homes still contain these toxic layers, requiring careful abatement during renovations. 13. Driving a black car on Sundays. In some religious communities, driving black cars on Sundays was prohibited. Black vehicles associated with luxury and showiness were considered inappropriate for the Sabbath day. Families with black cars had to make alternative arrangements for Sunday activities or risk disapproval or fines. Some people avoided buying black vehicles altogether. While this regulation has vanished, it shows how deeply religious values influenced seemingly unrelated aspects of daily life. 12. Carrying ice cream cones in your pocket. Certain areas prohibited carrying ice cream cones in your back pocket. This bizarre law allegedly originated to prevent horse theft. Thieves would put ice cream in their pockets to lure horses away without technically stealing them. By the 70s, horse theft wasn't exactly common, but the law remained. Imagine getting ticketed for pocket ice cream. This perfectly illustrates how outdated laws can create bizarre situations for future generations. 11. Roller skating on public roads. The 70s were peak roller disco era, glitter, neon, and funky beats. But did you know that in many places it was actually illegal to roller skate on public roads? Cities cracked down hard, arguing that skaters were a danger to both themselves and traffic. Some places even fined skaters or straight up banned it altogether. But let's be real, did that stop anyone? Absolutely not. Kids and teens kept rolling through neighborhoods, dodging cops, and perfecting their best disco moves. Eventually, many of these laws were relaxed, but if you were a street skater back in the day, you might have been breaking the law every time you laced up. 10. Singing in a swimsuit. Some beach communities actually forbade singing while wearing a swimsuit in public places. This regulation supposedly maintained decorum and prevented disruptive behavior at pools and beaches. Imagine being shushed for humming good vibrations in your beachwear. The rule captured the strange intersection of conservative values and beach culture. Today, entire pool parties center around music, but in the 70s, you had to choose between showing skin or showing off vocal skills. 9. High school smoking sections. High school smoking areas were as common as pep rallies in the 70s. These officially sanctioned spaces allowed teens to light up between classes. Teachers had smoking lounges too, and some even smoked while teaching. The smoking wall was often the social hub of the school, even for non-smokers. The idea of schools accommodating smoking seems impossible to today's zero-tolerance generation, but for 70s teens, it was just part of growing up. 8. Red dye number 2 in foods. The vibrant red candies of the early 70s often contained red dye number 2, until the FDA banned it in 1976 after studies suggested cancer risks. Mars removed red M&Ms entirely, even though they didn't use that specific dye. Parents suddenly checked ingredients and avoided anything artificially red. This food scare changed how many thought about food safety. When red M&Ms returned in 1987, they came with a safer dye formula. 7. Playing on railroad tracks. If you grew up in the 70s, the railroad tracks were basically your playground. Walking the rails, balancing on the beams, or putting pennies down just to see them flattened, all part of the fun. Feeling the tracks vibrate before a train comes, that was the thrill of the century. These days, railroad companies crack down hard on trespassing, but back then, tracks weren't just for trains. They were where childhood happened. 6. Candy cigarettes. Nothing prepared kids for future smoking habits like candy cigarettes. These sugar sticks in packages resembling cigarette brands let children practice smoking years before they could legally buy the real thing. Some even had powdered sugar that puffed out like smoke. Parents thought nothing of it as kids pretended to take drugs. Today, the concept seems outrageous, marketing smoking behavior to children through candy. Many places eventually banned them or forced manufacturers to change the packaging. 5. Leaded gasoline. Every trip to the gas station involved pumping up a neurotoxin into the atmosphere. Leaded gasoline was standard, and nobody worried about the distinctive smell or harmful effects. That little pump labeled unleaded was often ignored for the cheaper regular option. The phase-out began in the mid-70s, but wasn't completed until the 90s. The elimination of leaded gasoline has been called one of the greatest public health achievements of the 20th century. 4. Original Easy Bake Oven. The original Easy Bake Oven used a real 100-watt light bulb as its heat source, reaching temperatures hot enough to actually bake tiny cakes and cause serious burns. The warm glow through the window was magical as you watched your creation baking. Modern versions with safer heating elements lacked the same charm and danger factor. For 70s kids, it was a delicious introduction to baking, even if it was essentially a hot light bulb in a box. 3. Flame retardants in everything. Children's pajamas to furniture were doused in chemical flame retardants during the 70s. These chemicals were meant to slow fire spread, but no one realized we were essentially wearing and sitting on toxic substances. Synthetic pajamas had that distinctive stiff chemical smell when new. Many of these compounds have since been banned after being linked to hormone disruption, neurological issues, and cancer. The irony? What was intended as safety turned out to be its own health hazard. 2. Cyclamates and diet sodas. If you were watching your weight in the early 70s, you might have reached for a diet soda sweetened with cyclamates, until they were abruptly banned due to cancer concerns. The sudden ban forced companies to quickly reformulate, often switching to saccharin. Did your favorite diet drink suddenly taste different? Interestingly, many other countries never banned cyclamates and continue using them today, showing how differently nations approach food safety. 1. Phone booth stuffing. In the 70s, kids weren't glued to their phones, they were stuffing themselves into them. Phone booth stuffing was a bizarre but hilarious fad where people tried to cram as many bodies as possible into a single booth. The record? 25 people. This ridiculous trend exploded in popularity, with entire schools competing to set records. But after a few booths collapsed and a few noses got broken, cities started cracking down, making it one of the weirdest fads to be quietly outlawed. Today, finding a phone booth is rare. But if you do, maybe don't try stuffing your whole squad inside. Closing thoughts. From toxic toys to environmental hazards, the 70s were truly the Wild West of health and safety. What seemed normal then would horrify parents and regulators today. We survived lawn darts, lead paint, and second-hand smoke everywhere we went. And somehow, we lived to tell the tales. Which of these brought back memories for you? Share your 70s experiences in the comments below, and subscribe for more shocking trips down memory lane. Speaking of looking back, let's take a trip to a time when fashion was wild, technology was quirky, and trends came and went faster than a disco beat. The 70s were a decade of bold choices. Some we cherish, and some, well, let's just say they belong in the past. Click here to watch top 15 forgotten 70s fads we miss. Nostalgia overload.